Well, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, this happens. Let's begin. The article says that a primary school teacher now works in a sandwich shop after being sacked following a row over her refusal to use an 8-year-old's desired pronouns. The teacher is now pursuing legal action against Nottinghamshire Council responsible for the school over alleged unfair dismissal. Around 2 years ago, her school decided to facilitate the social transition of a little girl who wanted to be treated as a boy, she claimed. All staff members were instructed to refer to the student using male pronouns and a male name, and the child was granted access to boys' toilets and dressing rooms. The teacher, who apparently is a Christian, I don't know why it's important, but anyway, said she repeatedly warned about the potential harm to the child's welfare using the school's whistleblowing procedure. In response to her safeguarding alarms, the school said they were moving the child to another class to protect them from potential harm. She was also told her personal beliefs, were they to be acted upon, could be a direct breach of GDPR and an act of direct discrimination. After this warning, she was then suspended and investigated for an alleged ongoing refusal to following a management instruction. The suspension was waived, but only after the teacher agreed to do everything she could to avoid unnecessary contact with her transitioning child and to avoid using specific gender pronouns or any name when interacting with the child. She raised further safeguarding concerns with the school's governors and local authority, referring to key specific evidence suggesting that encouraging young children to socially transition poses a significant risk to their health and welfare. Her concerns were of course ignored again, she claims. Since her warnings, the woman says she has been sacked for gross misconduct after sharing information about the child with her lawyers in preparation for a judicial review claim against the school and the council. She said that the school has reported her to the Teacher Regulation Agency for an alleged confidentiality breach, which she could face a lifetime ban from the profession. Well, of course, I could be wrong, but I think the people actually run that school should surely go back to school themselves. I mean, if someone's appealing against a suspension or crime or actually whatever, they will presumably have the right to give any evidence to their lawyers or solicitors that they need to, whether the school likes it or not. How else are they meant to defend themselves otherwise? And I personally think that the school's reaction was completely over the top. And of course, while the 8-year-old does want to transition, at the age of 8, she might not necessarily understand the implications or impact of that. Because, I don't know about you, but when I was 8 years old, I thought I was going to be some sort of secret agent or racing car driver, or maybe even an astronaut on the moon, and was pretending to be that the whole time. I mean, our teacher's going to suddenly need to start pretending children are astronauts or whatever. Will that be the next thing? I personally think it could cause significant harm to young children to have this woke stuff forced on them, because no doubt it could put things into their mind which may make them think that they're either doing something wrong or may even feel pressured into acting a certain way. And of course, I don't know about you, but I personally think that children shouldn't be taught any of this sort of stuff until they're at least 16 to 18, because by then they're at least old enough to understand the gravity of the situation. But of course, that's not the only thing, is it? Because it was in the papers that apparently Scotland are now considering letting 12-year-olds take puberty blockers. 12! And that is obviously around that time when our bodies develop into adulthood. So if you don't understand about the decision you want to make, you could have serious health implications by taking these tablets, surely. And I cannot see how an 8 or even 12-year-old would understand those implications about transitioning, because they're children, aren't they? They're probably only interested in playing. Oh yes, I'll be a girl today, I'll be a boy tomorrow. And with the way they're taught nowadays, I'm guessing that is their version of, oh, I'll be a policeman today or an ambulance driver tomorrow. Admittedly, when I was at school, I'm sure the same for you as well, we were taught PSE, physical and sex education, from around 12 upwards. But it did not include all this woke stuff. It was just purely about the male and female body and sexual orientation, which didn't actually put ideas or preferences into young children's minds. And just seems they're being taught stuff way too soon nowadays, without actually being old enough to make a conscious decision. And while some of you are bound to think I'm an out-of-date dinosaur, I am at the end of the day only caring about our children's welfare. And thinking about it, there is no way anyone, teacher or not, should be sacked for not using someone's pronouns. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And if anything, that is bound to put people off becoming teachers in the first place. I mean, just imagine it. You train all those years to be a teacher, go through university and everything, and then 2 or 3 weeks into the job, maybe even a month or so, you slip up and then could get the sack. I think the government really needs to step in here. The council objected to Home Office plans to use what was formerly part of Britain's most famous RAF bases to house asylum seekers has begun a High Court fight. West Lindsey District Council asked a judge in London to impose an interim injunction preventing the Home Office from moving materials, equipment or people on land at RAF Scrampton in Lincolnshire. The airbase once played host to the famous World War II Dam Busters 617 Squadron. Mr Justice Kerr is considering arguments from lawyers representing the council and Home Secretary Suella Braverman at the High Court hearing in London. The Red Arrows display team was also based at Scrampton apparently. West Lindsey District Council began legal action after the Home Office announced plans to use a proportion of land at a former airbase for housing the asylum seekers earlier this year. Paul Brown QC, who led the Home Secretary's legal team, told the judge that ministers have a duty to house asylum seekers who would otherwise be destitute. He said the number of asylum seekers needing accommodation was at record levels, and Mr Brown argued that the proposed use of the site was permitted under town and country planning rules. Well, of course I don't know about you, but I for one think this is getting way beyond the joke now, and not a very funny one either, more like a Joe Brown style of joke in my opinion, and something seriously needs to get done. At the end of the day, these people presumably came here from the safe country of France. They were safe. Why come here? Unless for whatever reason, I'm guessing they don't like France or something like that, but that at the end of the day shouldn't be their choice. If you're running from war or try to claim asylum somewhere, then surely you'd be happy, wouldn't you, in the first safe country you come to. And who knows how many safe countries they got to before they got to France and then crossed the channel to us. You know, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against anyone who comes here legally. It's the illegal part I've got a problem with. And it just makes a mockery of our points-based system, doesn't it? Because if they do want to come here, they should fill it in, and then wait for the decision, and then come over here. And whilst the government says they're destitute, they could actually do something about it by turning them around to France, can't they? Instead of course, bringing them here in the first place. That would probably anger all the human rights campaigners, but at the end of the day, these people didn't have to cross the channel, did they? And while some, of course, say they're victims of human traffickers or whatever else, just remember, not so long ago, of course, we had of TikTok ads announcing some sort of channel crossing sale to come to England. Because, of course, it does seem strange, as I'm sure you'll all realise, that a lot of the time it's just men in their 20s and 30s who come across leaving their family and friends behind in war-torn countries. When if they're actual genuine refugees, they really wouldn't be doing that, would they? And thinking about it, if the Home Office wins the case, because I don't know, they say they're using emergency powers or something like that, then that's just going to embolden them even more to use more places around the country. And not only that, but these home traffickers or asylum seekers or whatever else are going to hear about it, aren't they? And who knows, could even be seen as an incentive to come here rather than listen to any deterrents that the government say. I personally think a much better thing for the government to do is, rather than bring people back here once they're rescued in the middle of the sea, would be to actually take them back to France, which I'm sure the message would probably spread quite quickly. But then again, of course, I'm guessing Macron or whoever else may have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, if people enter the country illegally without any documents or ID or whatever, then we won't know what criminal records they may or may not have and what potential risk they may or may not be to the people here, which is what a lot of lefties don't seem to understand, do they? Families have branded their local councils spiteful over fences installed across their back garden gates without notice, leaving them feeling hammered in. Derbyshire County Council has cemented the fence panels across garden gates that lead onto a car park, as well as closing the space and placing barriers at their entrance, restricting access for residents. An elderly resident and a young family living on Cavendish Road in Matlock have been left barricaded in since April the 21st and claim that they were given just a couple of days' notice before then having restrictive access to the car park space. After the closure, the council went one step further and installed 2 fence panels on the morning of April the 26th across the rear garden gates of 2 properties on George Road which led onto the car park. According to the residents, this was carried out without any notice and consultation, meaning of course that residents cannot exit from the back of their properties. The council plans to sell the car park to make space for 30 new homes, reports Derbyshire Live. A father of 3 who has lived there for a few years, did not want to be identified, said, "For me it was frustrating to come home to see that this has been done without any notice at all, and it was obviously pre-planned because the panels fit the gaps perfectly." He did say though that the council informed them that land registry ownership shows the boundary and that his has been checked with the authority's legal department, but he said this does not account for access rights, just land ownership. A county council spokesperson said there are no legal rights of way registered on this title deed held by land registry across the former car park off Cavendish Road, or for access from properties on George Street. The land was used for many years as a car park for our employees who worked at Chatsworth Hall, but as we no longer have any employees using Chatsworth Hall, we no longer have the need for a car park. Well, personally, I think this is quite disgusting. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that if we built something in our back gardens or wherever else, we'd need some sort of planning permission, and that the council would ask us to take it down, as we've heard many times before. So the mere fact that they can put these fence panels up on people's back gates, which obviously is a gate, so therefore presumably does have some right of access at the time they were built, and obviously from that time forward, I'm guessing means that the council weren't actually allowed to block them off. I mean, just imagine if there was an emergency in the back garden and someone needed to come in, like an ambulance or fire engine. And of course they couldn't, because they'd have to climb the gate first or smash it in or whatever, which is bound to take valuable time, isn't it? No doubt at the end of the day, all this is about money, isn't it? Because let's face it, if they can get 30 houses on the property, then presumably all they're seeing is pound size without thinking at all about the concerns of the residents that live there. Either way, I'm sure we can all agree that they should at least have provided them with a few weeks or maybe even a month's notice before putting these panels across, if there is indeed no legal right of access. Although if I was the resident there, I personally would be challenging that through the courts, because I can't see how it can actually be legal to attach something to someone's wall or property without their permission, which no doubt, of course, I'm guessing they probably didn't give. But at the end of the day, I'm not a lawyer or solicitor or anything like that, so there is a chance that maybe, just maybe, on this one occasion, I could be wrong. I mean, to be honest, it has actually happened before, but that was actually when I thought I was wrong, so I don't know if that really counts or not. And, to be honest, it does actually make me wonder if councils will probably really like the results of this damning poll in this video, which will undoubtedly affect a lot of people. Anyway, subscribe for more and I'll see you in the next one.